What's going on, guys? You already know who it is, and today I'm going to be bringing you a new series. I'm going to start doing some guides, and we're going to be starting off with Pinhead, and it's going to be my first guide ever, so I hope you guys enjoy it, and hopefully you also learn some stuff. That's what the whole point of this guide is. So this guide's going to be for people that are just picking up the game, and Pinhead might even be their first killer, all the way up to people that probably have more hours in this game than I do. I wouldn't be surprised. And also, to make this a little bit easier for you, there are timestamps on the video timeline, so you could skip to any little chapter that you want to if you already know some things, and you can get right to whatever you want to. So check that out. So we're going to get started with the base powers and abilities section. Pinhead's ability is called Summons of Pain. So you hold the power button and you create a gateway, which then whenever you release it, it will then open the gateway. Then you have a couple options. You can either cancel it, or you can spawn a possessed chain that you control yourself. Once you hit the survivor with the possessed chain, it allows them not to sprint. It inflicts them with the incapacitated status effect, which allows them to not be able to repair generators, sabo hooks, use items, and all that kind of stuff. When the survivor does get chained, their options are pretty much to break free, because otherwise they're just going to get hit. Another way for the chains to break as well is if they break them on the environment by going around a wall and it then breaks the chain, or if you yourself as Pinhead breaks the chain if you walk through it. But usually at that point you end up getting the hit. But at higher MMRs and in some situations, you might want to be careful if they're right next to the pallet, that you don't walk through your chains and break it and allowing them to get to the pallet. Pinhead also has a passive ability called the Lament Configuration. Now survivors can actually see this on the map from, I forgot what the range is. It doesn't really matter, but it's very easy for them to see it. And if they don't solve the Lament Configuration, a chain hunt will be summoned, which is incredibly strong. This is the source of Pinhead's pressure. The status of the chain hunt is represented by the circle chain around the picture of each survivor. All four of them are exactly the same. They're synced up. And once those fill up, that means there will be a chain hunt activated. Now, why is this strong, you may ask? Well, one of the reasons is because it's going to force one of the survivors, at least one of the survivors, to go and actually find the box. Otherwise, the chain hunt is going to constantly spawn chains on top of them and make it so they can't do gens. They can't really do much because they constantly have chains pulling them off of their actions. The Lament Configuration is an item in the game, so the survivors do pick it up. So if they have a flashlight in their hand, they have to drop it to pick up the box and solve it. Now, whenever the survivor has the box in their hand, they are oblivious, meaning you have no terror radius, so they don't really know where you are, if you're coming to them or not. The Lament Configuration by default takes 6 seconds to solve, I'm pretty sure. But when Pinhead himself actually finds the box or downs the survivor with the box, he'll pick it up himself and solve it, which then immediately activates a chain hunt all around the map, making the survivors scream. So you'll know all their locations right away. This is where you'll see Pinhead's main playstyle, in my opinion, his strongest playstyle, come into effect, is whenever you find the survivor with the box and you down them and just steal the box, instantly spawning a chain hunt and instantly causing pressure on the survivors. The box will spawn in a different location once it's solved, and how that spawning works is it's going to spawn at the farthest point away from both Pinhead and the survivors, and that's also at the beginning of the game. So the box spawn is always the same, and that's one of the reasons why you can see me using the build like I am in this video, and why it's so effective at finding the box, finding the survivor with the box, and keeping an insane amount of pressure on the survivors throughout the entire game. Another option that you have is to teleport to the survivor that is solving the box, which makes it so that they instantly drop the box and you spawn pretty much, I think, within 5 to 10 meters of them. You pretty much spawn on top of them, which will make it so that you can start a chase instantly, but you don't get the greatness of having the chain hunt on all of the survivors and creating that entire map pressure, making them have to find the box. That's why I feel it's more of a last-ditch effort. Maybe say you're not in a chase with someone and someone's solving the box across the map and you weren't ready for it, so you just teleport to them to get some pressure, at least on one survivor, and start trying to snowball some pressure. Now, I think that's going to do it for his base abilities and powers. The only other thing I could say is if you are new to Pinhead, make sure you go use his ability in a decent bit of games, because there is a little bit of a learning curve to his ability. It feels weird at first, but once you get used to it, you can start seeing the strength of his ability. It could be stronger, but it is still a very strong ability if used well. Now I'm going to move on to a couple different builds. One's going to be for starters. Then lastly, I'll go over my preferred meta build for Pinhead and what I use personally and why I use them and what changes I might even do to my build to make it even stronger, perhaps. Now, as always, for starters, I would recommend to not use any add-ons for the sole reason that it's going to change the way you use Pinhead in the slightest of ways. You probably should just get used to using his base kit how it's meant to be until you start getting more comfortable with his power and the way that you should be playing him. So the build that I personally would recommend to people that are just starting out with Pinhead and don't have any other teachables is going to be Deadlock, Scourge Hook Gift of Pain, Hex Plaything, and Bitter Murmur. So, Deadlock is going to help slow down the generators without having any other gen regression perks or stuff like Ruin or Corrupt Intervention, etc, etc. Whenever a generator is completed, the entity ends up blocking the most progressed generator for 20 to 30 seconds, depending on what level you have. And you can see that generator that's blocked, so you can either head over there or just not. I mean, it doesn't really matter. But either way, it gives you some time to get some more hooks and pressure on the survivors without them being able to pop another gen back to back. The next perk, Scourge Hook Gift of Pain, is yet another Pinhead teachable, and that's basically going to make it so that whenever you hook a survivor on the 4 random white Scourge hooks that spawn at the beginning of the game, when they're unhooked by another survivor, they suffer from Sloppy Butcher, so the hemorrhage and the mangled effect. And then once they're healed, the survivor suffers a 7 to 9% action speed penalty to both healing and repairing until you injure them again. It's a very complex perk, but once again, it gives you a bit of slowdown to the game to where you can build some more pressure on the survivors and get some more hooks. The third perk is yet another Pinhead teachable, and it basically makes it so that whenever you hook a survivor, they become oblivious until the hex is cleansed. And for the first 90 seconds, so the first minute and a half, only the cursed survivor is able to cleanse the totem. So the survivor that you hooked is the only person able to cleanse the totem for a minute and a half. And it is revealed to the survivor when they're close, so 24 to 16 meters depending on what level you have again. The reason why this perk is a bit helpful is because it takes away your terror radius, and it also gives the survivors a bit of a secondary objective to go for. Otherwise, they're never going to hear your terror radius, or at least that survivor. And it does stack on other survivors. So you hook a Claudette, and then while 30 seconds later, you hook a Meg or something. Both of them will be oblivious. So you can stack up and make all 4 of the survivors oblivious if they don't cleanse the totem in time. And having the lack of a terror radius allows you to sometimes even get hits that you weren't supposed to be able to get because the survivors weren't aware of your location. And the 4th perk for this starter build is going to be Bitter Murmur. This is a stock perk that you can unlock. So by leveling up Pinhead, it'll probably be in the Blood Web. And basically any time that a generator gets completed, you see the aura of all the survivors. Now this is helpful if you don't have barbecue and chili, because it's kind of like a worse version of barbecue and chili, making it so that you know where all the survivors are, you know where you are, and then you can kind of track down the box. And one of the cool things about Bitter Murmur and barbecue, and one of the reasons why I like using those perks on Pinhead, is because it's kind of a mid-game thing. So maybe 2nd or 3rd box, you can see a random survivor running in the middle of nowhere, and you know that he's going to get the box, so you can leave chase, you can forget those those generators and go straight to where that lone survivor is going, because it's most likely that he's running to the box. Now we're going to move on to the build that I personally use with Pinhead. And even though this build's kind of been adapting a bit and I have different styles of builds with this, you know, my Agitation Starstruck is very, very common, but I do just want to go ahead and just show you my straight up biggest meta build with Pinhead and why it's so good. So I'd say the most meta build for Pinhead is going to have to be Ruin, Undying, Hoarder, and Barbecue and Chili, in my opinion. Now, some people would obviously say Barbecue and Chili isn't the most meta perk, considering if you have game sense, you don't have to run Barbecue and Chili, which I personally agree, but I love running Barbecue and Chili. As you can see in probably like the large majority of my videos, I'm always running that perk because it's just so fun and it makes you not have to think nearly as much. But yeah, you're able to get a lot more value out of different perks such as Tinkerer, for example. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that on Pinhead, but for certain other killers, Tinkerer is very, very strong, and it kind of does the same exact thing as Barbecue and Chili, but in relation to the generators rather than the players. Certain perks that you could switch out for Barbecue and Chili, I'd say the most meta would be Thanatophobia. Thanatophobia just causes even more slowdown for totem cleansing speeds for the most part. That's where it's going to be used so that you can get more pressure using your Ruin Undying, because if you have your Chain Hunt being active the large majority of the game, it's just incredibly strong considering they can't just sit on generators or sit on your totem without being bothered by your hooks the whole time. And that pretty much covers the majority of how you would use these builds. You know, Ruin Undying is used very passively to slow down generators, and if you're using Thanatophobia, that's going to be the same. If you're running Barbecue, it obviously, anytime you hook a survivor, look around the map to see a lone survivor kind of sprinting around, and then that's how you know where the box is going to be before they even get to it. Plus Hoarder, the moment they pick up the box, you're going to get a notification. It's just incredibly strong. There's not really too much to do against it, in my opinion, besides just incredible teamwork. Yeah, so if you're going against solo survivors, they're going to have a very, very hard time dealing with Pinhead. Even if they're pretty good runners, they're just going to have to communicate well, and it's very, very hard to do that, obviously, if you're not on comms. And as a Swift, let's be real, you don't really run into those type of players too much, and even then Swifts, if you're playing optimally, are going to have a very hard time dealing with this build and this type of playstyle against Pinhead. Now we're going to go ahead and move over to different play styles, and personally what I think is the strongest play style for Pinhead is running these two add-ons that you can see in the gameplay, and they both slow down the solving time of the Lament configuration. The green one, Larry's Remains, increases the solving time by 2 seconds. And then Liquefied Gore, which is the yellow one, increases the solving time by 1 second. So in total, 3 extra seconds. So it takes 9 seconds to solve the Lament configuration. Combining these two add-ons with the teachable perk Hoarder from the twins, you're able to know where the survivor is within 64 meters of you anytime that they pick up the box. Normally you only get a notification whenever the box is being solved, but usually by then it's too late, right? Because it'll be 6 seconds, 9 seconds with the add-ons, and if you're all the way across the map, obviously it's too late. So Hoarder gives you basically that extra 2-ish seconds to be able to head in that direction and try and hook the survivor. Hooking the survivor with your possessed chain actually cancels the box solving, so that's going to be your biggest priority, is knowing where they're at with Hoarder, going straight to them, sending out a possessed chain and hooking them to cancel the box solving, and then just chasing down that survivor. Meanwhile, they'll have chains on them because they're holding the box, and when you down that survivor, you instantly start your chain hunt because it does the automatic box pickup. And once the chain hunt spawns, survivors end up getting pulled off generators, getting pulled off totems, not necessarily being able to go for unhooks immediately because 1, the hooks stop the unhook animation, 2, it takes them a while to get over to the hook because they can't just shift W to the hook because they're getting chained. If they run in a straight line, they're just going to get chained. So they kind of have to be wary of themselves getting chained. And obviously, once you pick up the box, your chain hunt starts, and then another box will soon spawn again. And your goal is to stop the survivor from solving the box, chase that survivor down, grab the box, and keep your chain hunt going at all times. So it's a very big snowball rinse and repeat process That's just one of the playstyles for Pinhead. It's obviously the playstyle I would recommend the most, considering it is the most effective at completely shutting down the survivors and getting 3Ks and 4Ks. But if you want some different ways to play Pinhead, he does have some other add-ons that, in my opinion, completely change the way that he is played. The purple Chatterer's Tooth add-on makes it so that the lament configuration is shown to Pinhead himself. And anytime that Pinhead picks it up, he becomes undetectable for 25 seconds. Now, you can see how this is completely different because this is making it so that he never is going to have a chain hunt. The goal basically is to not have a chain hunt because you want to stay undetectable for as long as possible, allowing you to get more M1s, use your power more on survivors, and get more hook states just by being Pinhead himself and not having the chain hunt be active. And I'd probably say a good perk or two to go with this would probably just be Tinker and Hex Plaything, which is actually Pinhead's own perk, Hex Plaything, so you won't have to really do anything for that. It's a pretty strong perk when being used with this add-on, because every time you hook a survivor, they become oblivious for essentially 90 seconds, and then they have to go destroy the totem. So you're basically going to have no terror radius for that person for 90 seconds, and then if you go get the box, everyone else can't hear your terror radius for 25 seconds as well. So it's rather strong, and that's going to be the way that you're going to be able to try and get downs while using the Chatterer's Tooth add-on. And the only other add-on I would say that really changes Pinhead's gameplay a little bit is going to be the Iridescent Lament configuration add-on that he has. So basically this is just going to make it so that while the chain hunt is not active, survivors that are beyond 24 meters of the box cannot see the aura. So normally the survivors can see the aura of the box. I don't even know what the distance is, but it's an insanely far distance. So they always know where it is basically. But with this add-on, it makes it so that they can't see it if they're far away. So they kind of need to go searching for it themselves, which equalizes the playing field for Pinhead and the survivors to make it almost like a race to see who gets to the box first. Now, when it comes to this perk, I would recommend probably using Lethal Pursuer. Weirdly enough, Lethal Pursuer allows you to see where the survivors are spawning at the very beginning of the game, and you already know where you spawn. So you're just going to be going as far away from the survivors and you as possible, and just run straight to where you think the box would be. Since the survivors don't instantly know where the box is, if you can pick it up and get that pressure immediately, it's going to be very hard for them to actually break out of it, because once the chain hunt starts, survivors are going to have to scour the map to actually go find the box. Now, Pinhead does have some other add-ons to use. His other Iridescent Engineer's Fang, which allows you to actually injure survivors with your possessed chain hit, but in my opinion it's actually really weak. But it's a cool add-on to experiment with. I would definitely recommend experimenting with a lot of his add-ons. He has a purple add-on called Impaling Wire, and it basically just summons an additional chain whenever the survivor breaks the chain with the environment. So it's kind of just a compensation type of add-on, but it's really interesting. Alright guys, that's gonna do it for my Pinhead guide. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed and you want some more content, and leave a comment down below on what type of guides and gameplay you want to see, because I'm trying to bring the channel into more of an educational type of channel. Not fully educational, just guides only. I definitely want to incorporate gameplay, but I also want to make the gameplay more live commentary, educational gameplay, rather than me just kind of stomping people over and over again. The reason why I want to do this is because I've just been learning recently that there's a lot of new killers that are coming to the game, and every time that they add a new killer, new people want to learn things, especially if they haven't been playing the game for very long and they're very turned off by killer, as I was back in 2016, whenever you basically just hop back and forth through windows as survivor, you know. But I ended up liking killer more after I got really good at survivor, so that's something I would also recommend. Playing survivor a lot makes you really good as killer, because you learn the optimal way that survivors run these loops and when they should be moving their camera back and forth, etc, etc. So if you're able to do that and counter that as killer, you'll find that a lot of these chases end much quicker. Anyways, I hope you all found this guide helpful, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.